firstly, thank you everyone for giving up some of your time today to come to this session. This session is called Call for Proposals or CFPs Debunked. As I said, if you hear me do say the word CFP, I mean Call for Proposals, or as I said, sometimes it is also called Call for Papers. And my name is Kimberley Cook. I am from quite a relatively small town, city, I guess, on the south coast of England called Southampton. I think it's probably most famous for the Titanic's maiden voyage. I then went to Bournemouth University and then I moved to London. You can now find me in the snowy Alps, which is where I live nowadays, with my dog Pixel. For anyone who knows me or has met me in person, I would 100% have shown you a picture of my dog. And I never feel like I can do a presentation without showing a picture of her because she's absolutely beautiful. And my partner's also a software developer. I'm a software developer. So what else could we possibly call our dog than Pixel? So this is just to tell you a little bit about me before we get into things. And also, like I said, I can't not show you a picture of my dog. And as I said, I've been involved in codebar since the beginning. I was like, I need to add some pictures to this just to show, you know, me at codebar over the years. And actually one of the first pictures I found was me with all this pizza. Which is taller than me. If anyone, again, who's met me in person, you'll know that I'm only 5 foot, so I'm quite short. But yeah, this stack of pizza after one of the London workshops was taller than me. And then this other picture, I can't remember what workshop this was at. I know it would have been a London one, but this was me doing the pairing. And like I said, I've been involved in codebar for many, many years since the beginning. So to start, the goal of this talk is to make submitting a proposal feel more approachable and exciting, not intimidating. There are so many out there, you know, if you know where to look, if there's particularly a conference. And when you initially open up those forms, it can feel quite scary. And basically the main thing I want to do today is just really debunk that and just say that actually it can actually be incredibly exciting, like submitting a proposal, whether it's your first one, your 10th one, your 100th. I've submitted few, got many rejections, which is such a normal part of the process, but it is exciting, and that's kind of one of the main things I want you to take away from today's talk. So let's just start right at the beginning by what is a call for proposals, or as I said, a call for papers. It's an invitation for people to submit ideas or talks. It could be a workshop, it could be a panel at an event or conference. They can be big conferences, you know, sometimes there's big, you know, huge conferences that have CFPs. Sometimes there are more localized events, you know, there could be one in your city. All of these may have CFPs, and the idea is to give everyone a chance to share their knowledge or story. And the really nice thing about these is you can have a really nice diverse audience apply to your conference. And another really positive thing I find about these is it's a really good opportunity for new speakers, you know, rather than sometimes conferences can get into this habit of, you know, approaching the same speakers, or, you know, having someone talk that's done lots of talking events before. So actually one of the really nice things about, you know, CFP is that it's a really good opportunity if you're a new speaker to start speaking at events. So typical things that you can expect to submit is a title. Now the big thing with a title is to be clear, catchy and relevant. Don't try and make it really long, abstract, and I get a bit more onto some tips later on, but clear, catchy and relevant. You want to grab people's attention. And then again with the description, some people call it an abstract, is a short summary of what your talk is about and who it's for. Sometimes they will ask who it's for. Again, some don't, but some do. Some will ask what the takeaways are. So what can attendees learn or feel afterwards? And then the format. And again, if you're submitting to a conference where you know it's just going to be a talk, it might just be a talk and that's not asked. But sometimes, you know, for example, with codebar Festival one, which I'll talk about later, I ask you what format it is, you know, what you want the session to be, because for us it's a bit more of like an open session. So these are kind of the typical things that you can expect. Sometimes there's other things, you know, for the codebar one, I also ask, you know, pronouns. Are you okay with it being recorded and uploaded to YouTube? What other things do we ask? there's some other things, but these are kind of like the typical things that you will almost always be asked to submit as part of that process. So then now moving on to the selection process. Now, selection processes can vary, but the one that I'm going to talk about today is kind of a very typical selection process. So the first bit is the submission period. So this is when people can submit their sessions, and it can be open for, again, the conference can choose how long they have theirs open for. Codebar's is open for around 6 weeks. Then they typically close, and then the org team go through a review process. And now again, each review process can look slightly different, but some kind of review process will happen. And then some processes will include a committee of other people that can review these sessions. Sometimes they score them, out of say 5 or 10, just to start helping them select that process. Sometimes also they will remove, say, the name and any information about who the speaker is. So reviewers just see, say, the title and description. Then it will go to shortlisting and scheduling the selected sessions. Then there is the notification part. So then, if your session has been selected, you will be notified, or hopefully if yours is also not being selected, you will also be notified. And then I would hope a lot of these sessions will then give to support to the speakers. I know we do at CodeBar. So again, some processes can vary, but this is a very typical process of what happens at a CFP. I heard of one recently where it is actually just one person that selects it. To me, that's quite scary. I personally wouldn't want to do that as part of CodeBar, because as CodeBar's process, which I'll talk about later, we bring in students particularly as part of that process. But so for me, if it was just me, I'd be quite scared to just pick all the sessions by myself. But like I say, this is a very typical average selection process. And then one thing I really want to highlight is that regardless of what session you submit, you do not need to be an expert in that session. Your perspective is valuable. So, for example, if you are, say, a junior developer, or you've maybe even not got your first job yet, but you want to share and give a talk that's from your perspective, that is valuable. You do not need to be an expert. And if there's one bit of information I really, really hope you take away from today, is this here, is that no speaker, very unlikely, is actually a quote expert. It's just someone who is sharing their perspective. So yeah, you do not need to be an expert. So now I want to share some tips on writing a strong proposal that hopefully would be selected. First thing to do before you start is think about your why. So why are you giving this talk? Why does this topic matter? And why is it important also to the audience? You want the audience to leave having, maybe learned something, even if it's just, again, sharing your perspective. Like, before anything, this is what I would say when you're thinking of giving a talk or a proposal, is just start with your why. My favorite thing whenever I'm starting this process, I actually get a pen and paper and I have a notebook and I just start jotting all this stuff down. When you're submitting your session idea, be very clear and specific, and also just focus on one area. When I've been to quite a lot of conferences over the years, I've looked at a lot of talks, I've watched a lot of talks, I've also selected quite a lot over the years as part of CodeBar. And the ones that I always have watched that are most successful, or the ones that we've selected, is because they focus on one topic. And if you've only got 20 minutes, you can't focus on loads of different things anyway, because you're then not going to be able to go kind of deep. So just focus on one and just be very clear on what your talk is going to be. And then that will make a really, really, really great talk. The next thing is make it relatable. Think about who your audience are, and then, try and give examples that they can relate to. One thing I've always tried to do if I give a talk, if I'm giving a submission, is think about how I can relate to it, but also stories, challenges that people can relate to. And then rather than just like, let's say I'm giving a talk on something that I've just learned, and that's the talk I'm giving. In my head, if I'm then like, well, I could have just read that from the docs, or read that in a blog post. To me, that's not going to be an interesting talk. You can start the talk with some of those really key facts and information, but then bring in your stories, your experience. That is what will make it an incredible talk and more likely to get selected, rather than, like I say, something that the audience could have just gone away and read in a blog post. This is quite a key thing, is choose an accessible title. I mentioned it earlier on in this talk, with, say, the CFP jargon, I'm going to call it. Let's just say this talk, I'd said, CFP's debunked. That's not inclusive, people won't know, people may not know what that is. So one thing when you're thinking of the title and your talk is think about some of the jargon or the slang or terminology that you might use, and try not to use it. Or, like I did at the beginning, explain what that word is. So if I say CFP at some point in this talk, hopefully now you'll know what I mean when I say that. It's obviously much easier to say, so I will, but I explained right at the beginning that this is actually what it means. So when I see titles or descriptions that have some of this jargon, for me that's kind of quite a big no. Or, like I did again, explain it in the title. Keep it inclusive. Like I said, avoid jargon. If you've got someone, a really good example is, I remember starting a new job, and this kind of isn't related to talking, but I remember starting a new job, and at this company they kept saying the word NPD. Oh yeah, NPD. And I was like, I eventually, after like 2 weeks, said to someone, what does NPD mean? And they were like, oh, like new product development. And I was like, oh, okay. But no one had told me that. Like, no one had said to me, oh, by the way, this is what it means. So again, like when you're thinking of putting together a talk, or and this can relate to anything, is just think about the terminology that you are using. And like I said, let's take I'll talk about my example in a minute, but and then the final tip that I have is asking for feedback. I think feedback, whether it's just relating to the talk in general, or the submission process that you're going to go through, I think it's really key to ask for feedback. And you can ask for as much feedback as you want. It might be that you just ask one person for feedback, in which case that's fine. It might be that you send it to a few people, but I think it's really important to ask for feedback, because there might be something that you could have easily missed. And actually, a really good example of asking for feedback, again, just in general, is I sent a newsletter this morning for Codebar, and it went out to 12,500 people. And I'd proofread this many, many times. And actually, when I saw the email this morning, I spotted a typo. And that's actually just goes to show you the importance of asking for feedback, is that I saw the typo, even though I had looked at this 10 times, this newsletter, there was still a typo. So yeah, asking for feedback is really key. So as I said, let's take this example, this talk, as a title example. This I think is quite a good example, but let's just say, and hopefully all of you wanted to come, because it's a very clear title. You were leaving with quite a good idea of what you were going to learn from this. But let's just say I'd called it this. You would have seen that invite and gone, what's a CFP? It wouldn't have told you any, if you didn't know what that meant. This tells you nothing about what you're going to learn in this talk. So yeah, this is just quite a bad example of what I could have called it, but luckily I called it this instead. So that's a good example, bad example. And then before I kind of start to wrap up, I did just want to share some tips on, I think, general public speaking in itself. And I'm not the best public speaker by any means. These are just some things that I want to share. So the first thing is practice out loud. You might feel absolutely bonkers for doing it, being in a room, talking it out loud, but it really, really does help. And the more times you do it, it will be smoother and smoother each time. Another thing is time yourself. You don't want it to, if you've been given a really strict time, today's time doesn't matter as much. But let's say, you're going to a conference and they're like, well, you've got 20 minutes. you don't really want your talk to be half an hour, because then, it might be that actually you get, kind of ushered off the stage, and then your audience lose the last kind of 10 minutes. Use slides to support, not dominate. You don't want slides with like tons and tons and tons of text. Your audience will then be trying to read all the things on the slide rather than actually listening to you speak. So, use them as a prompt and support. Another key thing is be yourself. People aren't here to listen to a robot. People may make a mistake. Me today, I'm feeling a bit ill. I've woken up a little bit snotty. That is just life, unfortunately. We're humans. I'm not ChatGPT. So, I'm not going to edit any of this out when I put it into the YouTube video, because this is me. This is who I am. This is particularly who I am today. So, be yourself. And that's because that's what people want to see. And then breathe, smile, and make eye contact. And also, if you're at the comfort of your own home, you can make a cup of tea to sip throughout your talk, because it's just nice and calm, and it's a relaxed environment. And that's the absolute joy of giving a talk virtually from the comfort of your own home. So those are just some of my public speaking tips. There are tons and tons and tons more. But also, like I said, I'm not an expert. These are just things that, when I see speakers, I try to do myself. I don't always do it. But yeah, these are just some of the tips. And again, when speaking, I think the main thing, again, I want you to take away is that the audience wants you to succeed. So, if you make a mistake, if your tech fails, then it's okay. People aren't there to judge, be mean. But I think also it depends somewhat who your audience are. I know an audience like Codebar are extremely welcoming, extremely nice, they're polite. So let's say all of a sudden now my internet crashed and you had to wait 2 minutes for me to join again. It would be okay. I wouldn't get completely bashed. No one would now go, oh, Kim's session was absolutely awful. You all want me to succeed and give this good talk. And that's the same with any conference that I've been to where I've seen. And then another really good example is whenever I see someone live coding to me is probably the most scary thing you could ever do. So whenever I see someone live code and actually a mistake happens, I still wholeheartedly praise them, clap them, cheer them on, because I know what they are doing is scary. It's a scary thing. And so, yeah, it's okay to make those mistakes, because actually, like I said, the audience want you to succeed. So, like as I mentioned at the beginning, this is all kind of part of kind of a big event that we are running, and that event is called Codebar Festival. Codebar Festival is a 5-day event that's happening in March. This event is both in person and virtual. There's 4 days of deep dive technical workshops, followed by an in-person day on the Saturday. This will be the 5th year we've run Codebar Festival, and it's hands down, our biggest event. Last year we had people joining from like 20 different countries virtually, which is amazing. And then we also the in-person we did as well. We filmed them all and then we upload them to YouTube. So actually, again, if you check out our YouTube, you can see a lot of the sessions from Codebar Festival that we've ran over the years. And so, like I said, as part of Codebar Festival, this is kind of really the only time we at Codebar open up a CFP, so a call for proposals. And it's really exciting for us. We really, really, really advocate for first-time speakers. I think people that are bringing their experience, their knowledge, regardless of what level, are incredible. So if you're listening to this and, like I say, you've never spoken before, please do consider submitting, because we are here to support, advocate for you, help you put your proposal together as much as possible. So here are some session ideas that we've come up with. I've put season suggestions. So again, feedback, proofreading. And I wonder if this is my brain thinking of we're going into the festive season. It's meant to say session suggestions, not season suggestions. But these are some suggestions that we've thought of that, we've not had at the festival before, or we've not done before. And actually, that's another really good tip actually that I've just thought of. If you're submitting to a session, is submitting to conferences, maybe take a look at what they've had previously so that you don't duplicate an exact talk. So these are some of the ones that we've never had at CodeBar. I know there are some here, for example, like salary negotiation is quite a scary topic to discuss, but actually we've never had someone at CodeBar run a session on that before. So yeah, these are just some of the ideas that you can submit. Here is now the QR code to take you to the form. If you do want to submit a session for CodeBar Festival, like I say, it's opened today, and it is open for 6 weeks for us to pick however many sessions actually for CodeBar Festival. We kind of never really say, oh, there's going to be X amount. So actually, if you look back at some of the YouTube videos, there's always a different amount every year, because sometimes when we get like loads of amazing like deep dive technical workshops, we will do like 3 in a day. Sometimes we'll do 2, 1. So yeah, please do consider submitting. If you have any questions about submitting, if you've got an idea that you really want to run past us, please do reach out. You can reach out to myself, Charlene, or Aurora at any point on Slack, and all 3 of us would be absolutely more than happy to have a video call with you to chat through your idea, develop an idea, because again, going back to one of my previous talks, is we want you to succeed. We really want you to be a part of CodeBar Festival, particularly if if this is your first time. Thank you so much for listening to this. I hope it was somewhat helpful learning all this information. And yeah, now I will stop screen sharing and answer any questions that you have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has any questions, if I've stunned people to silence, or there's lots of stuff in the chat. Let me just take a quick look at the chat. Okay. I'm still very much a junior. I'm still interested in giving a talk. However, I don't think I'll be able to give a full 90-minute tech workshop. I am, however, quite keen to give a talk virtually about a successful career. Yes, Jennifer, please do. That's, 30 minutes, it could be 20 minutes as well, as we've said on the proposal. 20 to 30-minute talks are exactly what we want for CodeBar Festival. If there's more 20-minute talks, we can have a few more talks throughout the day. It's really flexible, basically, this kind of CFP. And again, every year we've kind of had a different number of sessions. So yeah, 90-minute technical workshop, I totally understand. Like it's quite it's quite long, but actually that's also why if you've looked at the proposal form, is we pay our speakers, and that's actually something that we feel very passionate about at CodeBar, is that we want to pay people for their expertise. It's also us setting the standard of what we expect from a tech event. And so, yes, as you would have seen, all our speakers at CodeBar Festival are paid. Unfortunately, the March just gone, we weren't able to because we didn't have a sponsor. But actually, we've already secured one sponsor this year. We secured them 2 weeks ago. Thank you, T. Rowe Price. So actually, I already know now going into the festival that we can 100% pay our speakers, which is amazing. So yeah, you will be paid £50 if you're a speaker and £200 if you're giving a technical workshop. So yes, Jen, please do submit.
Sorry, just to clarify one more thing. Will I be able to give that talk virtually? Because I am no longer living in the UK. I'm actually one of the Virtual East Asia organizer. And
Yes.
CodeBar has always been a really big part of me having a successful career switching journey. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I can still do that virtually, and then my talk is not going to be quite as technical.
Yeah,
And
no, still submit and just tick the box to say that you can only do it virtually. Because again, the really wonderful thing about the festival is we can kind of make the schedule whatever we want it to be. And actually, I remember there was a session this year that was all about like your online identity, and that person could only do it virtual. So, and it ranked really high when we did our submission process. So actually, we did it virtually during the week as part of like it was like a lunchtime talk. They just weren't on the Saturday. So yes, please do submit the session still.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, Victor, I've shared the suggestions. I hope you were able to. Helen, can the deep dives be done in person for the festival rather than online? Unfortunately, they will need to be done online, purely because finding venue space to do in person midweek is incredibly difficult because most offices are at work. So we unfortunately can't do them in person. But we are always looking to do extra workshops in person. I know Aurora's been doing some work at the moment around finding some venues that could hold, say, 50 people to do some more in-person ones. So yes, that's currently where it stands for the festival at the moment, that we don't have any venue space for the Monday to Thursday, unfortunately, just the Saturday. Emma would be interested to know the demographic of the codebar festival attendees, especially where they are in their tech career. Great question. So actually, one of the things we say is aim your talk at codebar students, because that's who the event is for. And again, I know codebar students are quite a broad range in terms of knowledge, but it could be for someone who's absolutely at the beginning or someone who's a bit further into their learning. But if someone doesn't want to attend, they won't RSVP. But generally, the sessions are for codebar students, so someone who is quite new to tech. Any codebar festivals in Africa soon? There are unfortunately no in-person ones, but like I say, a lot of the sessions, most of the sessions throughout the week are running virtually. So hopefully you can join some of the sessions. And yeah, as Charlene said, we do have now a virtual Nigeria chapter, so please do join that. Cool. Okay, so there are all the questions that were in the chat. If anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask me a question,
Hi,
please do. Hey.
yeah, hi. Kanchan. Two questions that I actually have want to talk about two, three different topics. I submit more than one proposal?
Yes, yes. Great question. Yes. The wonderful thing about RCFP is you can submit as many sessions as you want.
And I'm not going to sell, but all my product ideas are the product I'm selling in the market. So is it near there is no conflict of interest on that? Like I'm not going to ask you buy it, but I will tell I have built it on, I'm selling it. This is why it is I have made. Is that
So you want
applicable?
your, so just so I'm clear, you want to be able to like tell people about this product that you've built.
Yeah, so like one is suicide prevention for the teenagers so that legally you can spy on the mobile. This is something I have. And one is about taking studies where you can use the AI. Even then, I will understand you are understanding or not. I
Yeah,
have this product, but these are on another. I have that safely use of AI, public AI, without
yeah,
providing any PII. These things I have the products but
yeah,
can be used anyway, so that I wanted to share.
yeah. Again, I would say submit them. And then, when we're going through the review process,
Yep,
if our
absolutely,
reviewers mark them high, then you will be selected, if that's what people want to hear.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely, thank you.
so yeah, that's what I would say to that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Hi, a quick one from me. In terms of technical workshops, how interactive can they be, and what can you assume people are bringing their laptop, and do you then prepare like a quick pack for them to like maybe log into like a portal, do some coding, or give them something can run before? How does that structure usually work in terms of technical setups?
Yeah, great question. So actually, it can really vary per technical workshop. But actually, if you want our audience to download something, have a pack beforehand, we can make sure that they have that as part of the session. So, and we've done it before where some go, okay, this session they need to download Unity, for example. We had a game workshop last year, and and the speaker had said, like, please make sure everyone has downloaded Unity beforehand, because it takes like 2 hours to download and then they're going to miss the whole workshop. So we just made sure that people beforehand had, if they wanted to take part, they downloaded it. Some people were like, actually no, I do just kind of want to watch along and learn, then that's also fine. But yeah, if there is something that you want people to have beforehand, whether it's a work pack, download something, then we can send emails. We can send multiple emails leading up to it to make sure, then we can definitely do that. And yeah, in terms of interactivity, you can make it as interactive as you want. Personally, for technical workshops, I think actually being quite interactive is more beneficial. If people can like show what they're working on, if people can like engage, then rather than just following along, I think it's more fun. But again, it's completely up to you.
And just a very quick follow-up on that. Is it possible, I guess, in terms of logistics, to have people work in groups and stuff? So if they're like, oh, with the person next to you and so on.
Yeah. So what we might do if people needed to go into groups is we'd get people on Discord, because we use Discord for our workshops, and actually we have rooms in Discord. So what we could do is we could host the event. We could either host it on Zoom or Discord. If people need to go into rooms, then they could go Discord. And actually, for anyone who's joined our virtual workshops before, they would be very used to that structure, because that's what we do there. You know, people, a student and a coach will go into one of those virtual rooms. So yeah, again, totally doable. We have both platforms that we could use.
Amazing. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say to everybody, I urge everybody here, do submit your CFPs. Even if they're not accepted, it's just such a learning opportunity, how to put one together. Before I joined CodeBar, I had 2 successfully, accepted, and I did 1 somewhere else as well, so 3 in total. I'm on Slack if you need help, advice, more than happy to support anybody. So do reach out on Slack. But I do urge you, it's such a huge opportunity. Even just trying to put one together is such a huge learning opportunity. So yeah, I get so much out of it. Can't wait to see what you all submit. But I'm on Slack if you need help.
Someone has just said, could you share the link? So actually, I know I've now moved away from the link, the
No worries.
QR code, but actually this is the link to the CFP if you do want to submit. And yeah, thank you, Charlene. And yeah, like iterate what Charlene said, if anyone wants any help with their submission, please do reach out to one of us. Sorry, Andrea.
No worries, no worries. I was going to say that, I love this talk. I have project in public speaking, so it's very nice to, see that you are sharing this with all of us. And I have to say, I have done a few talks over the years. Some of them are recorded and I can share them. But I would say that anyone in CodeBar is very open to give and receive feedback. And when I saw your season list, which I loved,
Oh, be
maybe
quiet.
you could. No worries, no worries. From a very dyslexic person, I understand the power of projects. So yeah, I just wanted to tell anyone that like a lot of people who are in CodeBar have already given talks on very crazy topics, and both Charlene and Kim can attest to the name of my latest talk, which was, how to survive late stage capitalism while being traumatized. A talk about how to regulate your nervous system, which we took place at Google, right? So it was a very crazy moment of life to have happened. And yeah, I just wanted to share this to tell everyone, like, we can take this assignment seriously, but also have a lot of fun in the process. And we are a very good crowd. So yeah, of course, you are in the organizers team, Kim and Charlene. I am part of the organizers in Barcelona, but I think we all share the same kindness towards each other. And yeah, hopefully we can start doing these festivals all over the world. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I would love that. I'd love to run more of them. World domination. Thank you, Andrea. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, just thank you so much for joining. Like I said at the start, giving up a bit of your, I want to say afternoon, but it could be your morning, it could be your evening, just a part of your day to come and listen to these talks. These type of talks, we do want to do more of them at CodeBar. Not talks that are just technical, but that talks that may help you with your career, getting your job, just that transition period. So also, if you ever have any ideas for something that you would like to happen at CodeBar, whether it's a talk or a workshop, again, please do reach out to one of the 3 of us, myself, Charlene, Aurora, or one of your local organizers as well. They can pass that on to us. We always love that type of feedback. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming along, and enjoy the rest of your day.